All right, so this is it's on YouTube. So either way,
Yes, sir.
um, go ahead, Mr. Florio.
Thank you. Officer Milligan, during the course of your investigation, I understood you to say that there was another person at the Woods Motel aside from Eric Tucker that you spoke with. Is that correct?
Yes,
And is it correct to say that that person was his name, Mr. Darius Smith?
I believe so. Yes,
Okay. And during the course of this interaction, you spoke with Mr. Smith. Isn't that correct?
I did. I don't recall what I spoke to him about because I believe, I want to say he was only charged with obstruction because he was in the room when we were trying to gain access. I can't remember the details of our conversation. Now, according to Smith, I'm sorry.
Mr. Tucker.
No, according to the victim, Smith, she said that there was someone there, but I didn't speak with the gentleman on scene to identify him as the same person.
Okay. Did you speak to the gentleman, Mr. Darius Smith? You spoke to the gentleman, Mr. Darius Smith, and actually arrested him. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you asked Mr. Darius Smith if he witnessed any sort of altercation between Mr. Eric Tucker and Ms. Kayla Smith. Isn't that correct?
I don't recall the details of our conversation.
Okay. Let me ask it this way. Do you recall Mr. Darius Smith ever telling you that he observed Mr. Eric Tucker commit a battery on Ms. Kayla Smith?
I don't recall him making such statements.
Okay. And if he had identified to you that he witnessed Mr. Eric Tucker commit a battery against Ms. Kayla Smith, you agree that that's something that you would have memorialized in a report. Is that correct?
If that's something that he would have stated, then yes, that would have went into my report.
And you'd agree with me that it's not in your report. Is that correct?
I would have to refresh my recollection by reviewing the report.
Okay. Would you agree with me that at no point during your communication with Mr. Darius Smith did he identify that Mr. Eric Tucker did not allow Ms. Kayla Smith to leave the room that they were located in?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. I believe the officer has already answered Mr. Florio's question that he does not recall the conversation between himself and Mr. Darius Smith.
I asked, Judge, when I asked the question the first time, it was with regard to the battery. Now I'm asking it specifically with regard to the false imprisonment.
Okay, I'm gonna overrule the objection. The witness may answer.
I do not recall the details pertaining to anything that Mr. Smith would have told me. There were multiple officers on scene. My conversation with him, if there would have been something pertaining to the allegations, it would have gone into my report.
Okay. And you'd agree with me that the allegation of a false imprisonment by Mr. Darius Smith is not contained in your report. Is that correct?
I do not believe so, no.
Okay. And to the best of your knowledge, has there were other, I guess, members of law enforcement community there you testified to? Is that correct?
Yes, there is. There was multiple.
And during the course of your investigation, no other law enforcement officer has identified to you that they were told by Mr. Darius Smith that he witnessed Mr. Tucker commit a battery or a false imprisonment. Is that correct?
I have not reviewed the supplemental reports that were put in, that were attached to my original report, but I do not recall anybody making such statements.
Okay. And you'd agree with me that during the course of your investigation, no one has provided you with any video of any alleged incident between Mr. Eric Tucker and Ms. Kayla Smith. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Did you find anything in the hotel room that was consistent with what you believe to be some sort of domestic dispute or physical struggle between Mr. Eric Tucker and Ms. Kayla Smith?
I didn't review the inside of the room. I know that we had a canine on scene that made some type of alert, and a warrant, I believe, was obtained and executed for search purposes. So I did not do too much inside of the room in order to preserve whatever would have been there. I don't know the result of that search warrant.
Okay. And during the course of your investigation, no other law enforcement officer present at the scene made you aware that they had observed an area inside the room where they believed there had been some sort of physical struggle or incident between Mr. Eric Tucker and Ms. Kayla Smith. Is that correct?
No, I was not made aware of, I'm sorry. I was not made aware of anything.
Okay. Did she allege that this occurred inside of a hotel room or inside of a room or out in the open? Where did she allege this had occurred?
I'm pretty sure it was inside the room.
Okay. And the false imprisonment, did she identify specifically, what did she identify Mr. Eric Tucker did so as to justify the false imprisonment charge?
During their altercation, after her stating multiple times that she wanted to leave, he would not let her do so.
Sure. Did she say that he stood in front of the door, that he physically held her arms? What act do you allege he committed so as to justify the false imprisonment charge?
To obtain those specifics, I would have to review my report.
Okay, so it's your testimony. You're independent of your report. You don't know the answer to the question. Is that correct?
I do not recall the details of my report in reference to your question.
Okay. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Any follow-up, Ms. Pitts?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, may Officer Milligan be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Officer Milligan, thank you, sir. You can be excused or you can stay on and watch the rest of the proceedings.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other witnesses, Ms. Pitts?
Not from the state, Judge.
Any witnesses, Mr. Florio?
None on behalf of the defense, Your Honor.
Argument from either side?
Briefly, Your Honor, the state would submit on the witness's testimony that the victim stated to him that she was prevented from leaving and that she had been battered by the defendant, that he would be in this location, that he observed for himself as well as photographed injuries that were consistent with her recitation of the facts. I believe the testimony for the court is that officers responded to that location and had to get assistance from the hotel to make entry, and thereafter, one of the other individuals that were in the room when they did make entry was in fact arrested for obstruction for refusing to answer the door. Based on those facts, Your Honor, I think the state has made out probable cause that the defendant should be bound over for false imprisonment and battery.
Mr. Florio?
Yes, sir, Judge. So first off, I don't believe that the state has proven venue in this matter. There has been no identification of what address that this occurred at. And when pushed with the officer as to, well, did it happen at the Woods Motel? It was I don't know. Without reviewing my report, I can't say that. And so there's been no testimony as to what address, at what location this alleged crime occurred. And without that, there's been no testimony that it occurred in Clayton County, Georgia. With respect to the battery charge, I understand that he testified that she said that Mr. Tucker put his hands on her and he observed visible injuries. Certainly we would dispute that, but I understand that testimony. Specifically though, Judge, as it relates to the false imprisonment, and I know the court knows the false imprisonment statute, but false imprisonment is defined as the person commits that offense when, in violation of the personal liberty of another, he arrests, confines, or detains such person without legal authority. And I don't believe that there's been testimony that occurred. There was this he wouldn't let me leave doesn't then equal that Mr. Eric Tucker either arrested, confined, or detained her without legal authority. There's got to be more than just he wouldn't let me leave. And so I don't believe the state has met their burden with regard to the false imprisonment charge. Certainly when you take the testimony of the officer in conjunction with the independent witness, Mr. Darius Smith. And I think we all believe that if Mr. Darius Smith had said, I saw Eric Tucker put his hands on Kayla Smith, that's something that Officer Milligan would have remembered and would have made its way into his report. And had there been some sort of statement by Mr. Darius Smith that Mr. Eric Tucker had confined her, arrested her, detained her without legal authority, certainly that's something that would have made it into Officer Milligan's report. So the absence of that testimony, the absence of that evidence from the only independent witness, I think is certainly troubling. There's no independent of her making this statement. There's no independent evidence that a false imprisonment occurred. And so for that reason, I would certainly ask that both charges be dismissed, as I don't think the state proved venue. But if the court were to find probable cause for the battery charge, I would ask that the false imprisonment be dismissed, as I don't believe there's been testimony that a false imprisonment occurred. Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Pitts, you get the last word.
Your Honor, I believe that one of the first things, and the court will recall the testimony, but one of the first things was that the Officer Milligan did state that he responded to 7828 North Main Street, and that was in fact located within Clayton County. And additionally, that
Oh, hold on, Mr. Florio. Go ahead, Ms. Pitts.
that he stated that that is exactly where Ms. Smith said that she would find that he would. Mr. Florio, seriously?
Miss
That's
Pitts,
Sector 4.
Miss Pitts, I got a clock to go, so I'm listening. I'm waiting to respond, but
that
go
Ms.
ahead,
Smith
please.
stated that that's where the incident occurred, and that's where Mr. Tucker would be able to be found. And Your Honor, additionally, the testimony of a single witness is sufficient if believed, and that's just the law. The officer stated what Ms. Smith stated. There was obviously, if believed, he took out these warrants for those charges, and based on what he personally observed was sufficient. So, Your Honor, I believe the state has made out its case in both counts, and we would ask that both would be bound over.
Okay, my recollection of the testimony is that the officer testified that this incident did occur in Clayton County. So I'm going to find that there is sufficient venue based upon that testimony. As it relates to the battery charge, I'm going to find that that was sufficient based upon the testimony of visual injuries to the arm. The false imprisonment is something that I'm not going to bound that over. The testimony, as I heard it, was that the officer met the witness at the police station and then went back to this location. The way that I heard the testimony, I don't know if I can accept that there was sufficient evidence that the Mr. Tucker prevented the witness, the alleged victim from leaving that hotel room. So doesn't mean it can't be brought back. I mean, you know that, Ms. Pitts, but based upon the testimony as I heard it, I'm not going to bind over the false imprisonment, but I will bind over the battery charge. So currently that'll be bound over to state court unless and until the state decides that they want to bring the false imprisonment charge back. And you know your witness, Ms. Pitts, and I didn't get to hear from Ms. Smith to be able to judge her veracity. But that's going to be the ruling of the court as it relates to that case. Okay, Mr. Florio, you may be excused. But what I need you to do, Mr. Florio, is to do a bind over to state court for warrant number 2022 WA03879 and a dismissal for warrant number 2022 WA03880.
Judges, so it was always I've never done that before. What do I need to do with respect to that? Because it's always been my experience that the court prepares those orders. What should I do?
I can take care of it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Moultrie.
Thank you,
So
Mr.
I asked Mr. Florio, Ms. Moultrie is like my protector, but so to keep this stuff out of my hands,
Yes, sir.
I have a pen and that's all I want to do is sign. Okay, thank you, sir. You're free to go. The last case I have is Mr. Rogers' client, Mr. Duffy.
Judge, that concludes my business before the court. May I be excused?
Yes, sir.
And I'll present the paperwork on Mr. Ben Mahoub to Ms. Pitt and Ms. Moultrie a little bit later this afternoon. Is that okay, Your Honor?
Yes, because I need to do some more research into that. So that'll give me time to be able to educate myself to make a rational decision.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Ms. Pitt.
Okay. It looks like we have an Officer Franklin who I don't see on the line yet.
She's being contacted right now, Judge.
Okay. Does anybody need a break, Ms. Rogers?
I'll be placing a break.